Welcome, fellow wine lovers. This is the Wineghosts podcast. I'm Mate Vash, certified sommelier and seeker of hidden stories behind the most mysterious drink in history. So grab a glass, get comfortable, and listen how today's ghosts get out of the bottle. In this episode, you'll get to know Gvantsa Sekhniashvili, whom I first met at the WSET course in Budapest. As a Georgian living in Hungary, Gvantsa already has an interesting career in the wine world. She shares her impressions about the Hungarian wine market, the history, present, and the future of the Georgian wine, and how she is helping wine lovers discovering new wines by hosting authentic tasting experiences. Welcome to the show, Gvantsa. How are you today?
I'm doing great, thank you. How are you?
Yeah, great. Thank you very much. This is the first episode, so I think I'm also quite excited, as maybe you are too. And could you please shortly introduce yourself and what is it really a wine tourist? Why are you really a wine tourist professional?
Yeah, sure. My name is Gvantsa, as you already mentioned, and I'm from Georgia. And my background is actually wine tourism because I graduated from Wine Tourist Innovation Master, which is a joint degree by Spanish, French, and Portuguese universities. So it's a great place to get the education and practice in wine tourism. So yeah, This is why I call myself wine tourism professional.
Wow, great. And what did you really how did the interest in wine come from actually? Or is it in the blood or
Yeah, because you know that in Georgia, everything started there, they say. Maybe this is a reason that from childhood we were, with my family, we were participating in harvest. We have a little vineyard in the countryside. It was a big fun always because whole my family and relatives were gathering to help in the vineyard to pick the grapes during the harvest time. It was always in the mid-October, I remember. So when I was little, I really liked to do it, and then we were making these local desserts from grape juice and walnut, and it was a really big fun. So from the beginning, I was really into the wine, but I never thought to become a wine professional or something like that. So I decided to study business administration in tourism. So tourism kind of lead me to the wine in the end because, and this is how I am into wine tourism today.
Perfect. And why did you choose this international degree, or what? Because you mentioned you studied also in France and Portugal.
Yeah. So when I graduated my bachelor, it was tourism. My thesis was about wine tourism, and surprisingly, I wrote it about Vilan, wine region in Hungary, very important wine region, and I compared it to Georgian wine region, which name is Kachetin. And it was very interesting, and I really read a lot about wine tourism, how the wine routes are developing, and how that do they work. So I got very interested, and then I found this master, this international master, which is studied in three countries, learned in 3 countries. And we started our master in Spain, in Tarragona, in Catalonia, and we had quite a lot of practice and experiences in the wineries. So it wasn't really the theoretical studies; it was more oriented to practice and innovation. So we were free to innovate whatever we wanted to do. And then we continued in Bordeaux, in France. So we lived half years there and practiced as well. And in the end, Portugal, Porto. So this was the first time that this master actually had students. So I was the first generation, and I didn't know what to expect, and nobody knew for sure because this was the first time. But it really sounded amazing that you could live in 3 countries and study and visit all these wineries and wine routes. So I was very enthusiastic for it, and for sure I got the scholarship, and this was much easier to accept it and go there to study for free. So yeah.
I imagine. And also, I guess it was really interesting to see the different winemaking methods in different countries, like in France and Portugal, and also
Yes.
to compare it. And how, what was really the biggest difference between these countries? Because these are traditional winemaking countries. What was the
Yes, yes.
best in
There
in
are many,
every, so to say?
yeah, many differences and many interesting things going on there for sure. These are the three most important, one of the most important countries in winemaking. And actually, I was thinking about from the Georgian point of view that, for example, what is going on in Bordeaux now, how they produce the wines and how the wine industry is developed on the level that Bordeaux is. From my point of view as just a Georgian consumer or professional, there is a big gap. So we in my country, I think we should be learning a lot from these leading countries because their technology is so modern and it's like so much developed that we really need several years to reach that level. And regarding the technologies, for example, fortified wine technology. Before I lived in Porto, I never tasted actually fortified wines, and I didn't really like it at all. But then when I studied everything about the technology, how they make, how difficult process it is, I really fall in love, and this is amazing that they have some point of difference that they can make because of its climate, because of its tradition. They can make port wine only in this area. What we can't say in, for example, we can't make in other wine regions. So they have this unique, authentic method that makes them very different and very interesting. I really like the different point, for example, in Spain, that they are kind of open for wine tourism. They really want to get the guests at their wineries and make some wine tastings, and so many people are now opening the doors. But we can't really say the same about France. What I saw in Bordeaux, for example, that many big chateaus are just closed and they don't really get the tourists and guests, and that's a little bit disappointing. But it's their.
And why do you think it is? They try to keep the secret, or?
No, I think they are just okay with their profits and with their business, what they're doing with the wine. So they don't think that wine tourism would make a big difference in their business. So it wouldn't bring some more additional profit. But actually, this is a 21st century, and without wine tourism and without this social media and what's going on today, this promotion, it's really hard to keep your quality and keep your image somewhere where you were, for example, 10 years ago. For sure, the wine quality is the best and it's really great, but we need something additional. So yeah,
Some marketing.
I think exactly. Yeah, but many chateaus are now opening and they are doing great job. So I'm really happy about it, and I think this is a way to go.
Perfect. And you have your own business, as I
Oh yeah, kind
do
of.
say correctly.
Yes.
Could you tell the listeners something about your profile or the profile of your business?
Yeah, so I really always wanted to make something on my own, something little, and for sure connected to wine tourism and wines. And when I arrived firstly in Hungary, when I moved to Hungary, it was almost 2 years ago, I really wanted to do something little business for myself, but I wasn't really confident in my knowledge of Hungarian wines. So I made some courses local here in Hungary, and I tasted lots of wines. I traveled to some wine regions. So finally, when I gathered all this information, I thought, okay, that's time to do this, and I started a little wine tasting experiences, which is held in local wine bar, natural wine bar. and I host maximum 5 people per day, so just a very small groups, and my the average people are 2 or 3. So during the tasting, it's like very familiar situation, very personalized. They can ask any questions, and after each tasting, we just become friends, and it's really great experience. They can taste 5 wines for sure. I choose the wines what are tasted beforehand. So we taste 2 white wines from maybe Tokaj or Shomel wine regions, and then we taste 2 red wines, probably from Vilan or Eger or Sexard, and then always we taste Tokajasu. I prefer to show them 6 Butonyos, so the best quality, and they love it. So I really enjoy to show Hungarian wines and to little bit promote it, because there are many people who visit Hungary and they return back to their homes and they have no idea that Hungary is even producing the wine. Nobody really tells it, and yeah, I think that we should, we who are wine professionals here locally, we should promote it a little bit more.
And why
So,
do you think it is? What's Hungary's wine industry missing actually, and why can they not communicate themselves enough?
yeah, I think that we still are missing the wineries to open every day. There are many wineries that are open, but just several days of a week. And if they're open during the season, they don't have enough staff to get everybody who wants to visit them. So many times I'm calling the wineries that I want to visit them on the weekend, and they say that they're already full and they can't do anything about it. And I don't really like to organize trip like previous day. I usually organize quite early, like at least 10 days, and they never can do it. So I think they should understand that if they invest a little bit more, so if they hire some more staff for it, if they train their staff, they can get more tourists, and then finally they can promote their winery, and Hungary is a wine producing country. So that would be, I think, great. And yeah, also we should have, I think, a little bit more experiences like I'm doing. For sure, I'm happy that there are not a lot, so I don't have so many competitors here, but it would be great that we have different offers. What I can offer them is just a one experience, but there are many people who can do different things, what they are good in. For example, some sommeliers who know a lot about gastronomy, and they can show this to the tourists.
And do you see that it's like a common thing between Hungary and Georgia, that they are missing kind of the right attitude and investment, or maybe the capacity to communicate their values, so to say, better? Because my personal experience was also that
Yes.
living in Germany, I see that a lot of wineries or a lot of wine professionals are communicating better. Maybe their wines are not, so to say, better, or the technology is not so much more developed, but I see that their communications and also their kind of systemization is more efficient. Do you say it's a kind of a common thing also in Hungary and in Georgia? And do you see that it's kind of a common thing towards east, so to say?
Yeah, I think this is a common thing that people want to communicate. In the wineries, for example, both in Georgia, it's a little bit different situation. That the wineries are really very open to get the guests. So they are open 7 days. Like they don't have schedule. They are open whole day, and that's one, like from the on the opposite side of this situation. So there are some countries like who are just closed for wine tourism, and my country is just very open. And some wineries are even focusing their whole business on wine tourism, and this is maybe not that great. But yeah, I wanted to add one thing that Hungary might be also struggling in, is that government who actually should be responsible in some institutions in the government who should be responsible for promotion. So they should invest a little bit more to promote Hungarian wines, because what my country is doing very good is promotion, and Georgian wines are like very trendy today. And I think Hungary also has a big potential to do it, because you have your here we have our own grape varieties in Hungary. This is very unique, and we could make the wines with the trendy styles what 21st century's customer likes. And if the government helps a little bit more, then it could be very, very famous and very well exported wines. I mean Hungarian wines. So,
and do you see it disadvantage that Hungary has 22 wine regions, and also it's kind of hard to communicate, and also customers maybe only know just a few big names, but you also mentioned Villány, Tokaj, Eger,
yes.
and they maybe miss on some hidden treasures, so to say?
Yeah, I don't think it's a disappointing thing or disadvantage, because if you properly communicate it, they don't need to remember all this. You just communicate the most important places, the most important wines and blends, for example, and that's it. The customer doesn't need to remember exact name. You should just communicate that this is Hungarian wine, which is premium quality, and that's it. They just remember that this is Hungarian wine. So proper communication is a key in my opinion.
And
because
I also, yeah.
Otherwise, it would be very hard to change all the system that here we have 22 wine regions, and then to make just very few or half of it. That would be difficult for the local growers and for the regulations and everything. So I don't think it might happen in the near future. So yeah, we should adapt a little bit.
And I also seen you organize Georgian wine tastings. Am I correct?
Yeah. Yes.
Can you tell us a little bit about that, and how did you kind of manage to do so, and where do you have the tastings?
Yeah, so this tasting I organized with my Georgian friend, whose name is Tamari Otmezori. She's here a student in the same university where I studied PhD, but she's studying agriculture, horticulture, something like this, master. And we both were very motivated about Georgian wines, and to somehow start doing something about Georgian wine in Hungary, because we are here. We know about wine, and we want to make something for it and promote a little bit. It was a common idea. I always had this idea, but I could never manage actually in the beginning. It was really difficult. And then with this, together with this common force, we could do it. And there is a wine bar called Vino Piano. And the owner of the wine bar was also very enthusiastic to host this masterclass, and it was a great success. So we made 2 dates. We had 2 dates already in the end of September, and we offered to our guests 4 wines, 4 natural, traditional Georgian wines, and it was a great thing, a great event, because the wines were very different. They were one of the best examples of Georgian traditional wines, which are exported in many countries. Even though they are very little producers, they have their wines in many countries, Europe and USA and so on. Yeah, we also had Georgian snacks, like the Georgian bread, which we bought in the Georgian restaurant here. So it was the only thing that we bought here in Hungary, because it was impossible to bring freshly baked bread from Georgia. But the rest of the things I brought myself from my country. It was lots of dried fruits, because it pairs very well with Georgian wines, which are quite strong, and it has lots of flavors and aromas of dried fruits and jams and so on. So we had also some typical very store snacks, also made from fruits. Also Georgian smoked cheese, some cornbread, and many other things. So it was a great time. We introduced the country, we introduced the wines, the technology, and many people were interested. So we really want to continue doing it. So maybe in the beginning of November or in the mid November we can make one more event and see what will happen.
And how do you actually source the wines? I guess you know some producers from back home, but how do you actually select it, or what is your criteria to select those wines?
So we really wanted to show the wines from east and west of Georgia because they produce with different technology, first of all, and they also have different climate and soil, and the final wine styles are very different. So this was the first thing what we really wanted to do, that we chose at least one wine from east and another from west, because in the west they produce little bit lighter style orange wines or amber wines. We call it amber wines in Georgia. They don't really macerate so long time with the skins. It's just like 1 month probably. And in the east, we have quite a long maceration and quite full-bodied and very strong tannic wines. So in the beginning, we tasted one from the west, white wine, amber wine, and then we continued with the eastern wine, which was quite full-bodied and really strong, but very, very interesting. It had very good character. And then we tasted rosé, which we could compare with the light-bodied, little bit light-bodied red wine, because rosé made from the Papari, which is Georgian grape variety, black grape variety, and which is very strong and deep-colored variety with lots of tannins. Rosé made from that wine is like a lighter red wine. So yeah, we had that wine also made in clay vessel, in Georgian clay vessel called Kvevri. And finally, we finished with one red wine, which was very, very interesting. And it got the highest points according to the decanter article, which was just released very recently. So we were very proud to show this wine, and people were really in love with it. They wanted to buy it and age it for like long time, because the wine had at least 20 years of aging potential. So.
Oh, and what is this wine, if it's not a secret?
No, for sure, it's not a secret. Its name is Papari Valley. It's a terroir. Papari Valley is a terroir, and also the winery's name. And the wine was Saperavi. So maybe you can check it. And the article name was I think something like Amphora. Yeah, something like Amphora, but it's written by decanter, so you can have a look.
Perfect. I try to find the link and
yeah.
copy it into the description.
Article, so we can.
And just some questions about the terroir in Georgia, because you mentioned this kind of, but because there is a big difference between east and west. And could you tell us a little bit more about the sub-regions in Georgia, and what are the key differences in terms of soil and microclimate? And
yes, sure. So the main difference is the east and west. So on the west, we are bordered by the Black Sea. So this is a big effect. Black Sea is really moderating the climate, and it's making really big humidity there. So this is a main effect to the west of the country. And regarding the east, you know that Georgia is bordered by Caucasian mountains. So many times from the mountains, some cold air is descending, and it really makes a big difference between day and night temperature. So some premium quality grapes can be produced in many terroirs nearby these Caucasian mountain ranges. And in the east, we have a little bit more dry climate, but it's really roughly because there are many differences in short distances, because we have many rivers, many lakes, there is a sea, lots of hills and mountains. So each terroir is very little, and it has they have their own characteristics. So really difficult to tell
generalize it.
but the main thing is that on the west we have this moderate climate because of the Black Sea, and on the east more rough climate with because of the Caucasian mountains. But almost everywhere where there is no very huge mountain, you can produce wine in Georgia, and this is a great thing. In every little corner you will see the vineyard. So yeah, regarding
the soil types, because you mentioned like the mountains and also the sea. I guess that there are some on the west. There are some alluvial soils mostly, and on the east more rocky. Or
also in Georgia we have almost all these soils what exist in the world. So this is very varied topic. Alluvial soil you can find both in east and west for sure, because on the east we have many rivers, and around these rivers there are many soils which are alluvial. In the west you can also find many clay, limestone, gravel as well, little bit of sandy, so really rich soil in terms of different types of soils. So yeah, for the wine, I think it's really good what kind of soil we have in Georgia.
And also you mentioned that there are, or at least probably listeners also know, that there are over 500 grape varieties in Georgia, if I'm correct.
Exactly.
And what are the more trendy ones? And what do you think are the more hidden treasures that were, or which grape varieties have more brighter futures, so to say?
Exactly. So during the Soviet Union, the same happened in Hungary and in Georgia as well, that the varieties which were high yielding and which were more resistant, they were more important, so that they could make lots of wine for low quality. So just a few varieties were planted, and many indigenous grape varieties in Georgia like almost disappeared. But nowadays I'm really very happy and very proud of the Georgian winemakers who are planting these old varieties, which are available in the research centers that have all these grape varieties, all these at least 500 grape varieties, and they are now experimenting, because not all the 500 grape varieties are good for the winemaking. For sure, they cannot make so high quality wines, but there are some that are now trendy, and they are planted on very small areas, but winemakers understand that these wines can be like future of the country's winemaking. And it's really great thing. So the most important grape varieties today still are Saperavi, as I mentioned. It's a black grape variety, and it's like planted everywhere in the country. It's a very deep color variety because it has color even in the pulp, so not only the skin. And in the white grape varieties, Rkatsiteli is the most planted variety. Really everywhere you can find Rkatsiteli. But there are other grape varieties which are now becoming very popular, like for example Mtswane, Shria, and many other names that might be a little bit weird now to say. Yes, this Georgian difficult pronunciation. So yeah, I really hope that many winemakers can now experiment these wines, because it's a big risk to just plant some variety which you don't really know if it's good in this microclimate and on the soil or not. We don't really have this many researches going on today, so it's really difficult.
And you also mentioned the Kvevri, as I pronounce it correctly. And this is a special winemaking method in Georgia. There are some. Could you just tell listeners briefly about the method, and maybe you could tell us which grape varieties are more fitted to this kind of methodology, or you also use stainless steel, or also barrel fermentation, or what are really the differences in winemaking method, or what makes Georgia really unique in this kind of category?
Sure. So to be clear in the beginning, we in Georgia also make normal wines from with the stainless steel tank and barrels, and this is a majority of the production. So majority of the wines are produced like this, and the wines which are traditional and unique, they are the small part of the production, and they are produced in Qvevri. This Qvevri is a clay vessel, where we made wine around 8,000 years already, according to latest researches. And this Qvevri is a very huge vessel, which is used for the fermentation and also for the aging of the wines.
When you say huge, what should listeners imagine, or what does it mean?
It can be around 2,000 liters.
Okay, yeah, that's huge.
Yeah, that's a huge, yeah. It can be little ones, can be 500 liters, for example. It can come any size, but for sure for the fermentation they are using little vessels, and for the aging the larger ones, because of the temperature control. It's really important. They control it naturally, they don't really have any technique to cool the temperature during the fermentation.
They store it under the ground, right?
Exactly, yes.
Always.
When you're building your winery, your cellar, in Georgian cellar is marani. So when you're building your marani, you have to bury your Qvevris underground, and it's very well fixed, so you can never move your Qvevri from there. It's a final destination.
So it's kind of the foundation of the house then.
Yeah, exactly, yes. So it has to be decided beforehand. Yeah, it's always underground. We never put it on the ground. And the reason why we bury it is the temperature. That underground, it's always constant temperature, and for the aging of wines, it's like amazing. You don't have any kind of variation in temperature, maybe just 1 or 2 degrees, but it's always constant. It's in the ground. And also during the fermentation, it's a cooler temperature. So for sure, we are trying to somehow control it with punching down, with stirring the skins. But the temperature of the ground really helps a lot. So yeah, this is a main difference between our Qvevri and different kind of amphoras which are used in Portugal, Spain, and other countries, which are standing on the ground.
Mm-hmm. And it's also because you mentioned 8,000-year-old technique, so to say, and it's, if I'm correct, this is written by the Orthodox monks, or how do you really know that, or where does it really come from?
So the proof was archaeological findings that found some seeds, grape seeds in the Qvevri, in clay vessel, and they found that there was a tartaric acid that proves that in old times there was a wine. For sure. So this is kind of proves that 8,000 years ago we had wines there in Qvevri, and we were using the same technologies at that time. For sure, it has developed a lot. So even the shape and size of Qvevri has changed, and today we have this a kind of egg-shaped shape, which is like a perfectly made by hand, for sure. So yeah. This is the proof. It was done by very famous scientist from USA, who is also researching many other seeds and stuff like that. So that's a great proof that somebody did for Georgians.
And also, when I was reading upon these monasteries, like these Orthodox, which is the main religion in Georgia. Yes. As I know, I found it really interesting that also in France, for example, there was a really big help from the church, or from actually the monks in the winemaking method, and also in Georgia it's quite common.
Yeah, exactly.
Also, why do you think it is, and it's still a common place for the monks to make wines?
Yeah, it's always common thing. They were making wines and they still are making wines. And even per family, each family, winemaking family in our country has a special cellar. If you could afford special cellar for the church or for the monastery, you would make it, or they would have some special qvevri separately for the best wines for the church. So even the families were making wine for the monasteries, but monasteries themselves, they still have, and they had in past time, the cellars, monastery cellars, where they made their own wines that was used during the mass. And today you can really drink one of the best wines from this, made by monks. For example, in Gvantsa region, you can find several very, very good premium quality wines made by them. And it's very important because Georgian people are quite religious. Majority of the people are Orthodox Christians, and I think that when it's important that monks and the monastery and the religion showed you that the winemaking is good, and then people for sure follow it. And this is maybe how we could survive all these 8,000 years and still make with the same technology and somehow remember how to make it properly. So that's an important role that monks and monastery played during the history.
So in Georgia, wine is really still it plays an important role in the everyday life, I would imagine.
Yes, exactly. For me, it was a must when I was a child to go to harvest. Like my father would not allow me to stay home and do nothing. So I had to go there, and whole day I had to participate in the harvest when I was even very little. So we always made the wine, even though we never bottled it. We always made it for our own use in the glassware. Yeah, it's still
is it really common in Georgia? Like almost every families have their own little wine production, so to say, or do you have also big cooperatives, or what is really the structure there?
Yeah, but many families have their own wine. Somehow so it's kind of like this, that when the majority of Georgian people, live in the capital, but many people still have like countryside houses and some vineyards which are owned by them. So, for example, for me, it's very, very easy I lived and I was born in the capital, but I always had to go home to go to countryside, and we still have the little vineyard, where we make the wine. And this is very typical. Everybody is like this, almost everybody. So we don't really, unfortunately, we don't really buy bottled wines. In the past, it was not like that. In the past, we were buying, and we liked to bottle the wine, but because of Soviet Union, they didn't really think that bottling these low quality wines makes any good idea, because anyway it's low quality and it doesn't need to be bottled. So we kind of forgot this tradition to bottle the wine, but now it goes back, and many people are making their own wine in their home, and they are also trying to bottle it and save it in a proper way. So that's a great thing, that we get back our tradition and how you have to really do it, because you can't really save your wine in some plastic or something like that.
So do you think it goes into the right direction, so to say?
I think so, yeah, because there is a big competition today. Everybody is opening the winery. Like 5 or 7 years ago, we had approximately 50 wineries in the country, and today we have around 1,000 or more than 1,000. So it's a very big growth, and there is also a big competition, and they are kind of studying from each other how to make great wines. But it's really hard, because we need to invest in our own education as well. While you are not a winemaker and you don't have any experience, you just remember something from your great grandfather or grandfather. That's really difficult. So we are lacking a little bit of knowledge, education, but just because of today's trends, that Georgian wines are so popular in the world, we also are forced to study and make premium quality, because otherwise we aren't going to be so famous forever, for sure. If people don't like wines, they never gonna buy it again, and we are not going to be famous at all. So
And also, as you also live in Hungary, and I'm being a Hungarian, I also seen this throughout the years that maybe one of the biggest disadvantage of the Hungarian wine market is that the average size of the wineries are not big enough, and they are not export ready, so to say. Do you think it's common also in Georgia? Because you mentioned that you have also a lot of winemakers and also a lot of family
yes.
centered winemakers.
This is common. One thing is common, another is not. So the common thing between the Hungarian and Georgian wineries is that we all are, many wineries are small scaled, very small scaled. We have many wineries which are just 2 hectares or 3 hectares, or even half hectare, something like this. But the difference is that for Georgians, it's not a problem to export their wines. So when somebody is making the wine, the majority of the product is exported. So we don't sell it locally. Maybe 20% of their production is sold, but there are many wineries who don't even sell a bottle in the country. So I have never seen in my country the wine, but I am tasting it in other countries, and that's very, very good, but very strange as well. We have so small overall productions, that it's not really enough for whole world and for this trend going on today. So I think that it's not a problem. If you are even little winery, small scale winery, you can try to export. You just need to find the correct importer or correct company who will buy your wine. Maybe not some huge importer who is not interested in industrial wines and who needs just the quantity and also quality. Maybe you can find something little who is more oriented on some natural winemaking or something like that, and they will be more than happy to buy your good wine, if you have a good wine, for sure.
And where do you really see the success or the big difference that Georgians are so successful to export their wines? Is it really the trend of the natural wine trend, so to say, and the amber wine trend? Or do you think it's that Georgia, the country itself, is kind of trendy now, and also because they produce their wines more uniquely? And
so I think our country, Georgia, really has a great potential, what everybody would have loved to have. And in my opinion, we have to somehow use it well. So in the potential, I mean that we are a country where, for now, we know that winemaking kind of started around this area, around this land, somewhere in Caucasus region. So that's a great potential, that this is a oldest technology, oldest tradition, and we still do it the same way, and we never stopped making wine the same way. So when somebody hears the story behind the wine, that's already thrilling, and that's already amazing. But where I see Georgian wine is more concentrated on the amber wines, truly, and on the Qvevri wines, because this is a unique wine from Georgia. I really love the classical winemaking technology, what we drink today here in Hungary, made in stainless steel, concrete, or barrel. But this is not our main tradition. We just started it very lately. And I think if we concentrate on the high quality but more stable amber wines and Qvevri wines, then we can really be successful in high-class restaurants, hotels, and premium wine bars of the world, which really are happy to sell the wines which are so unique and so high quality. But we really have a problem of the stability in the wines because of transportation. Some wines we receive somewhere in Hungary or wherever, they are already faulty because of the transportation, and because the wines are natural and they don't really have even sulfite sometimes. So maybe winemakers should use sulfite, or should use some technologies that modern winemaking knows, and it's not it's allowed according to the natural winemaking. So yeah, these things we should consider and make high quality wines.
could you maybe recommend some places where listeners could go to read more about Georgian wines, or could you also maybe recommend some wineries to visit, at least on the website? Or
Yes. So the first question was about the book. Personally, for a long time, I wanted to read this book. Its name is Amber Revolution, and it's written by very good UK writer, wine writer. And I would really recommend this book because it's not only about Georgia; it's about the amber wines and the natural wines of the world. I have just ordered it very recently, and I'm really looking forward to read it. So I think that it would be a great start to know something about wineries. And this book also includes recommendation for the wineries, good wineries to visit. And the second question was which winery to visit. When you're going in Georgia, there is a big, there is a lots of offers of wineries that you can visit. And they have also many offers of activities that you can do in the winery. So it's not only wine tasting that you can experience. You can also experience gastronomy, anything starting from breakfast, lunch, dinner, for sure local cuisine. And you can also participate in the cooking masterclasses. Like anybody will offer this activity, and it's really interesting. It's really great that you can study very fast and in a very good manner and in a fun way how to cook Georgian cuisine, which is amazing, tasty. But you really need to know where to go. There are, as I mentioned, 1,000 or even more than 1,000 wineries, and not all of them are proper to be visited. They lack some qualities. So for me, one of my favorite wineries, and I think one of the leaders in query winemaking, is Iago's winery. It is very close to Tbilisi, to the capital, and around 40 minutes or 30 minutes you are there. And they produce amazing wines made by Chinuri grape variety. It's a white grape variety, and somehow these wines are really amazing. Whenever I recommended this winery, the people just fall in love, and they visit many other times, and they just bought the wines anywhere else where they could find. They don't really have big production. It's just a very small scale family run business, but they make amazing wines. I think they even make now pet nuts, sparkling wines, which I have not tasted, but I'm really sure it would be great. Another winery from the west, which I really love, and we also had on our masterclass, is Baia's Wine. It's a winery managed by also family, and the main winemakers are two sisters and brother, very young people, around 25, 26 years old, I think. And they are making really great wines, which are these amber wines, also red wines. But these amber wines are, for me, interesting because they are easy to drink, not very tannic, not very hard to understand for the first time when you have no idea what is Georgian wine and you drink something from East region, which is super tannic and super difficult to enjoy without food, and you don't even have the recommendation on the labels that you must drink it with some food. It's really hard to enjoy. So I would recommend Baia's wine, which is really great, very smooth, very good amber wine. And not only to start, if you drink this wine, you will really fall in love, I think. They have amazing styles. Yeah, I think this wine.
Okay. Thank you. And just to go back to the food, because maybe listeners, hopefully all around the world, can get Georgian wine somewhere. Amber wines have a really unique kind of need for food, if I'm correct. What kind of food would you recommend with Georgian wines, which listeners could buy almost everywhere in the world?
Yeah, so Georgian food is not very difficult to cook, but you need the ingredients for sure. We in the country we really like strongly flavored food, like with lots of nuts, walnuts, hazelnuts. Some sauce is made of these walnuts and garlic, so we really like many flavors. Also some spices, lots of fresh greens. We like to just freshly cut in the garden and use it in the food making, in the cooking. So the meat is very important, the basic for the Georgian gastronomy, and it really pairs very well with the strong wines. So from the east, when you're drinking Kvevri wine from the east, it can be both white and red, because they are, both of them are very strong wines. You can pair them definitely with some meat dish. And when you're drinking amber wine, which always have this kind of flavor profile, like nutty dried fruits, some interesting spices in the nose, it's really good to pair it with some nut-based food or some with nutty sauce.
And is it because they are fatty, or more like the more because, for example, walnut, it also has a more almost tannic kind of character,
Yes.
and or what do you how do they really match, or what do you think the reason is?
Yeah, the match is that in the flavor and aroma of amber wine, you can find this nut, lots of nut and walnut. You can really detect it. And if you're eating some meat, which is served with some sauce made of walnut and nut, that's a great pairing, I think.
And what kind of meats are typical in Georgia? Because do you also eat poultry, or more
Yes,
like red meat?
we eat poultry a lot, chicken, turkey, and pork and beef. So pork and beef are the most eaten and used meats in the cuisine. We also have some sheep meat, but it's really cooked very rarely. So yeah, I don't really think that it's something very traditional.
Could you also recommend some other wine regions, or do you have other favorite wine regions? Maybe some secret tips
Yes,
for the listeners?
I really love Porto and Douro Valley, to just go there and see this amazing landscape. It's not only wines and wine tourism, it's just beautiful nature, these beautiful vineyards on the slopes. So if anybody ever is going to Porto city and just visiting the wineries in Vila Nova de Gaia, I think they must not miss the Douro Valley and some wineries which are there. We tried the cruise, so we visited Douro with a little ship, and it was one of the most amazing experiences because of the landscape. So this would be my recommendation for anybody who is going to Porto. Another recommendation that I really love to drink and to enjoy is cava. So in Penes, we had quite a lot of trips, and I really enjoy cava a lot. For sure, we were visiting mainly biggest wineries, making sparkling wines, but they are amazing. They are doing great job in wine tourism and in their wine production as well. So these two are kind of my favorite places to go.
Okay, thank you very much,
Thanks a lot.
I'm trying to put all the links in the description,
Mm-hmm.
also about the wines and the website, and maybe where customers or where listeners could find you. And
Sure.
thank you very much for the recommendations and the information. It was great.
Yeah.
Thank you.